Ask us to introduce Sandhi. He gave me his real name, Sandhiprakash, Bhide. But he said, just call me Sandy. I first met Sandy in Portland, Oregon at a national SBIR conference. I was standing talking to an associate, and Sandy came by and he saw my name tag, and he saw Wyoming on my name tag, so he stopped and introduced himself. And it turns out he's from Albin, Wyoming. How many know where Albin, Wyoming is? Well, that's better than I thought. I have a neighbor, and I was discussing with my neighbor meeting with Sandy, and I said, he's from a place you've never heard of. It was Albin, Wyoming. He said, I was born in Albin, Wyoming. So it's better known than I had thought. It's a town on the Nebraska line, about 45 miles northeast of Cheyenne, population 180 or something. But Sandy is a futurist with Intel. His title is Senior Strategist and Technologist. Man, that's quite a title. And I hope we hear about the future from you, Sandy. I have a very fond recollection of Intel. I was there at the beginning of the company some 40 years ago, 1968 actually. I had a company in Mountain View, California, and Bob Noyce, who was the founder of Intel, was on my board of directors. And I knew that he and Gordon Moore, who is famous for Moore's Law, were very unhappy where they were at Fairchild Semiconductor, which was the pioneer semiconductor firm in Silicon Valley. And Bob Noyce and I had a number of conversations on starting a company, because I had just started one a couple of years previously. And so I have fond memories of Intel, and I've tracked its progress through the years, and with people like Sandy on board, their future is assured. And with that, I'd like you to welcome Sandy Bhide.
Thank you very much, Gene, for the kind introduction. I'm especially happy to be here because exactly 30 years ago, I graduated from University of Wyoming, from computer science with my master's. So there couldn't have been any other opportune time than be here on the 30th graduation anniversary, if you can call it. So I'm the last speaker. So I'm hoping, I'm glad you're still sticking around. So when I came here in Laramie in 1981, I told them I was an Indian. So a bunch of guys said, which reservation are you from? So I had to tell them, no, I'm a little different kind of Indian from Pune and Mumbai. So today I wanted to give you a quick brief. I have been spending quite a bit of time in looking for opportunities and also playing with innovation. My job, I look 3 to 5 to 7 years out and look for opportunities for Intel. So I just wanted to give you a quick brief. I wanted to let you know that I wanted you to I don't know if it's going to work, but try to make this a little bit entertaining, but it's probably not going to quite work, and that's fine. One more try. Okay, that's fine. What I wanted to show you was a little picture here, which is I do a lot of music programs, full-fledged 3-hour, 4-hour programs. And I wanted to show you some of my moves, innovative moves, that besides Intel, this is by the way in an Intel auditorium. I wish I would have gotten this working, but that's fine. Okay, I'm going to try one more time, just in case. Okay, I'm going to leave that. I wanted to give you a brief. This is how I looked when I came in 1981 with a goatee, with bell bottoms, and kind of a nerdy looking with a pen sticking here. And what you really want to do is develop ideas into mature business. And this is how I looked like an early entrepreneur, but this is what you want to develop into as a mature business. I wanted to give you a quick brief as to what all I'm going to talk about. First of all, I want to give you a quick background framework. Then I want to talk a little bit about opportunities for innovation. Where do these ideas come from? And then really talk very specifically about some of the future innovation and opportunities. So let me give you a quick background. I think this quote by Mark Weiser is the most profound technologies are those which disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. Meaning, we are talking about technology here, how to develop innovations and opportunities in technology business. But eventually, you want to make sure that the technology business becomes part of everybody's everyday life, just like phones. Phone is not part of my life. I don't look at this as some kind of a exotic technology. It sits here, it helps me, it's already part of my life. The other key point I wanted to bring in, I'm going to get into the main point. First of all, at this moment in the history of computing, we are at an inflection point in the history of data and computing. If you look at the last 66 years of computing, data has always come to where computing was, meaning either through serial buses, parallel buses, Ethernet, what have you. Data always came to computing. But that is not how the future is going to be. The future is going to be where computing will have to go where data is. And that mindset change is going to create a lot of opportunities for entrepreneurs. The future is really about scaling and distributed intelligence. It's not pulling in data to necessarily a data center somewhere or cloud. And I'll tell you why, because we have been talking about cloud this morning. I have a little bit of a different opinion. And I'll tell you why. The second part is what explains it. There is not enough God-given bandwidth to be able to take all the data and push it back into the back end and do the processing there. We are getting into the mindset where we don't like wires. We don't like power connected to my laptop. We want everything wireless, which means we have to depend on some kind of a piece of spectrum. And if you have looked at spectrum, there is actually no space left on that spectrum. It's so tight that to say we are going to convert all this, send all this data back to the back end is probably likely not going to happen. So what I'm predicting here is we are looking, by the end of the decade, we are looking at 50 billion devices and 1 trillion sensors connected to internet. And assuming half of them are slow sensors. Slow sensors meaning 50 or 100 kilobits per second, but the rest of the half are pretty fast and produce probably USB 3 kinds of data. Right? Look at a high definition camera, see the amount of data it creates. There's no possible way to push that all the way over wireless. I want to talk about grand challenges for 21st century because we are looking at innovations and opportunities. You can look at 20 plus or so opportunities here. So if there are entrepreneurs who are saying, where do these opportunities come from? These are 15 or 20 major challenges that we are going to face going in the next 20 to 25 years or 30 years. At every place, there is an opportunity to do something very phenomenal. All we have to do as entrepreneurs is to look into those places and see exactly where those opportunities are. Mapped onto this are 50 billion devices and 1 trillion sensors. Each of those sensors and devices are going to create tremendous amount of data. And there are plenty of opportunities for innovations. I think so that's one basis. I keep that in mind every step of the way. We haven't solved most of the problems here. We are just about scratching the surface. Think about reverse engineering the brain. We have barely started. There are tons and tons of opportunities there. As entrepreneurs, we tend to get locked into technologies. And sometimes we get locked into technologies and then we find what possibly might be the usages. Where would be my customers? And that's a wrong way. I call this a butt model, which is, as an entrepreneur, you have to think about how whatever you are going to create is going to be used. Is it going to really solve somebody's problem? Is it really going to make somebody's life faster, better, cheaper, whatever the metric is? You have to really make sure that we are not just chasing technology for technology's sake. In fact, most innovative things that we do, maybe 5% totally new technologies. It's really reassembling all the existing knowledge in technologies that might be beyond your domain. So for example, if I'm working on Internet of Things, there might be technologies that I might be using in medical devices, there might be technologies used in oil and natural gas platforms. I just haven't looked enough, but I could bring those technologies back in. So the understanding a clear user benefit is the first step in pushing forward your idea. The second one, as I mentioned, is whatever technologies you have, do they really answer those problems that customers have? And the third one is, you might have great usages, great technologies, but there is not a viable business model. If you cannot make money out of that, then great usages or great technologies don't help. So I want entrepreneurs to think in this Venn diagram of what I call butt model. There is another way of slicing this. So these three are dependent on each other. You have to think. The other way of slicing and dicing and looking at problems is to look at, there are two types of problems. I call them either a Tylenol problem or a multivitamin problem. Tylenol problem means I have a headache and I need a solution now. And most people, if I have really a headache and I have a presentation to do, I don't even, and there is a pharmacy that has only one Tylenol left. I don't mind paying $20 because I have such a headache, right? So look at problems where people really, really are hurting. Solve their problems, that's where you're likely to get most money. There is another category called multivitamin category, which is, hey, if you do these following things, see how your life is going to be better long term. For whatever reason, the human tendency is to pay attention first to pain. And once your pain is gone, then you think in terms of how does it help me long term. So as you are scanning through solving customer problems or problems, you need to look at which category they fit in. As I mentioned, sometimes usages gives rise to new technologies, sometimes technologies that you have might enable new usages. Now, the opportunities for innovation, the question is, where do they come from? And I think I have had discussions with many, and I'm going to show you a few examples. How do you go on finding problems? I think one thing that I have found is you have to be extremely curious, observant, and ask why. Every step of the way, why this way? And it really doesn't matter. If you meet an artist, ask an artist what are his or her problems. If you meet a lawyer, ask him or her what are their problems. And then go and find solutions. Ask people what problems they are facing every day. The third one is called cross-pollination with other disciplines. I work at Intel, I work with high technology, and for me, every solution has to be high-tech. Not true. I have a lot of friends in cold storage business, people who work for Portland General Electric or Northwest Natural Gas. A lot of these people have already similar solutions, which probably with minimum or little or no effort, I could change and adapt to whatever my solutions are. So you don't have to create new things. Understanding existing technologies. Look at Apple. Mostly whatever is in Apple, all the technologies were there. Sensors have been there for a long time. Processors have been there for a long time. Storage has been there for a long time. It is the unique combination in which a solution was put that really what appealed. Thinking outside the box, go crazy, and I'll give you a few examples after that. There are accidental encounters. That means many times, if you keep your eyes and ears open and look at everything minutely and very carefully and with an observant eye, you'll find that you will come across solutions accidentally. You may not be looking for them. The last one is what I call repurposing an existing solution. So let me step through 2 or 3. So the very first one is what I call repurposing. So I have a hoodie here, right? People who eat popcorn while they're working on the computer, you can take that hoodie, turn it frontward, back to the front. Here is a simple solution that solves my problem, and I can eat. There is no mess around my keyboard. Look at the other problem. I don't know if you. This is one example I wanted to share. This is what I call the story of a germanium transistor, OC44, and 08 human diode. So I'll give you a little stories. Since this is afternoon, I want to tell stories. When I was about 12 years old, my dad gave me first germanium transistor. This was called OC44. And I was interested in building super heterodyne receivers, so I kind of sat down and built, that's the circuit diagram, and it kind of looked like this. This is not my picture, but something very similar. As I was very proud, I could listen AM stations and go walk around until one day I dropped. And right after I dropped, funny things started happening, which is whenever I took that radio inside the home, no problem, I could listen. The moment I took it outside, it stopped working. And I couldn't understand what the heck was happening with this. And I spent about a week to figure out, and this is where the tenacity of an entrepreneur, you have to really dig down and really find out what the heck is happening. What happened was, this OC44 transistor had a paint, black paint on it. A little piece of that paint came out. What was happening is when I took it out, it was sunny and bright, with the light that went inside through the translucent transistor head, it started saturating it. And it would stop working as an amplifier. When I went inside, when it was dark, no problem, it was working in the linear range of the amplifier. Things were working really good. So I took this concept and I said, now I have found a sensor that if I put it in light, it stops working when I bring it inside. So I think I shared that with Heather on the phone call. I took this and then we had a bungalow, and right in front of that there was a big gate. So I dismantled this, and I had a little bulb on one side of the gate, and this sitting on the right hand side. And as long as there was a light focusing on that transistor, things were okay. Now I was around age 12, so I was interested, at that time I was getting interested in girls and those kind of stuff. Right? So I had interesting magazines that I was looking at. And, like many of you might have seen this, parents come in, you go and stash them under your bed. Well, I had a little photodiode and sensor in front of my gate. Whenever parents walked through, the light was cut, there was a little buzzer going on saying, parents are coming home. So this is what I mean by accidental discovery, where I had a super heterodyne receiver that turned into a light sensor, which I put to good use. And thank God my parents never figured out how I knew they were coming in before they got in. Another simple thing, this is about observing and looking for opportunities for innovation. We probably have seen Golden Globe Awards, and there is a microphone, and sometimes the ladies are speaking, and then another 6'5" guy comes in and he's doing this while talking. And I immediately said, why not have a simple sensor that automatically adjusts based on, normally when I talk, I'm blowing air, and that's a good enough heat sensing mechanism. And the microphone should be able to go up and down automatically, right? This is what I mean by casual observations on TV to say, there is a problem, somebody has to adjust and readjust, while that thing could readjust by itself. This is another thing that I built. It was a baby computer. It was a calculator that I built when I was, again, 12 or 13. It did additions and subtraction for 1 to 20 numbers. And this was another thing that I did where my father was a professor, and it was about the time I started hearing about computers, and I thought, gosh, I want to build a computer too. It wasn't quite a computer, it was a calculator, but it was 1969. This is the original picture of the output came on the lights. These are simple things about innovation. I want to show you something about innovation. Not that everybody should do it, but this is again a story. A Indian importer was wanting to import Italian shoes into India, and of course he had to pay excise duty and whatnot. So that it was pretty expensive. Until one guy figured it out. What he did was he separated all the left shoes and all the right shoes. And first came the shipment to Bombay port saying defective shoes. And this was this batch. The custom guy who went in, figured out these shoes, nobody's going to use it. These are bad shoes. He let him in, no excise duty. About a month later, another port in India came the right side shoes, another shipment. And eventually both of them got connected. And guess how much excise duty that company paid? Zero. I mean, I'm not saying you should quite go illegal on this, but this was an example. Another small example. I don't know if you have been to India. There's another innovation example, and I just want to mention it. If you are in Mumbai, you travel by train. The train season pass is about 500 rupees. So one guy came and said, they're packed. There is no way to sit inside the cars. There are probably 5 times as many people in the car as the capacity. So one insurance company said, hey, we'll give you travel insurance. All you have to do is come to us, buy insurance for 100 rupees. If you're caught, pay the money and bring back the receipt, we'll pay you back. Guess what was happening? How many times does a conductor is going to check your pass? Probably 1 in 100. Statistically they figured out, once in 6 months you are probably going to get caught. You go back to the insurance agency, they pay you, and you're paying only $100, 100 rupees a month rather than $500 season pass. Right? So all I wanted to communicate is these are all business innovations. Not that these are the ethical ways of dealing with, but at least as long as you have innovative mind, there are ways to deal with it. These are some of the examples of what I have been trying to do at Intel for the last 7 or 8 years. I have done, when I was at Electronics, I did a lot of the front end of the oscilloscopes using a virtual front panel. If anybody has used an oscilloscope, you literally have hundreds of buttons. Buttons inside buttons inside buttons, and it's highly complicated. And the very first innovation was to just have one LCD panel, have virtual soft buttons, and you could use a mouse and a roller on the mouse to do most of the functions. I'll go through them very quickly because I want to get to the main meat of it. But I did a lot of work on multimodal and adaptive interfaces. I did a lot of work on sensor integration, contextual computing, Internet of Things. The last one I wanted to talk about is because it's specifically useful for entrepreneurs. A week ago, I did a proposal to my CEO. But prior to that, about 11 months, I had gone to every general manager, every vice president, everybody that I could find out and say, look at my proposal, here's new business ideas. And every time I got a no. This is not going to work, or I don't have budget. was getting frustrated. 11 months is a long time to hear no, 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 no. Until I got tired of it, and I said, I'm just going to go to the CEO. I had 20 minutes with him. At the 13th minute, I got $1 million approved for doing a proof of concept. And the message I want to communicate is, throughout your entrepreneurship while you're developing, you're going to have ideas, but if you know exactly what you're doing, and if you have faith in yourself and your ideas, you're likely to be told, no, this is the baddest thing that has ever happened. You have to trust in yourself and say, no, I know exactly what this is and how this is going to help. And I have taken 11 months of no, but I finally got an okay with it, and a yes from it. I want to change the subject a little bit. What I wanted to talk about today is Internet of Things. Intel has embraced this Internet of Things. Internet of Things is in my mind is nothing but a system of systems, as versus a machine to machine, which was a self-contained system. This is billions of intelligent devices sharing data securely, supporting legacy in new environments. It is now that we are creating literally, I think the new term that now HP has started using is Pronto bytes. That's 10 to the power 27 bytes is the amount of data we are talking. The data has to be churned, so interpretation has to be made on what that device and on what that data means. So there is a very clear end-to-end play, analytics play. And for entrepreneurs who are especially interested in algorithms, this is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to be able to say, I'm going to get very disparate types of data. Some might be structured, some might be unstructured. I'm still going to find a way to make meaning out of the data. And the key things that are going to be, the key thing that is important, I'll show you some examples here. Security is going to be a major issue. So if you have solutions that make end-to-end Internet of Things secure, you are going to be far ahead. You are going to be a very successful entrepreneur if you can solve that problem. I wanted to walk through maybe a few examples, what Internet of Things and the amount of innovation that could happen. I have about a dozen of these examples. The world is going through a colossal change. We are looking at smart cities. We are looking at smart cities have all kinds of problems in terms of managing. You can look at our revenue. The revenues in the smart cities is dwindling. We have more things to do. Our infrastructure is collapsing, and we have to find a way to deal with this. So I'll go through only 3 or 4 examples, but when I share the presentation, you will get a lot more detail. So if you look at smart city, there are probably, I have just taken some few examples around smart parking. There is a structural health of buildings and bridges and monuments. This is even becoming more important for people who know about 4 or 5 years ago when the bridge on Mississippi River collapsed. That's a major example of infrastructure now, which is about 50 years old, has started failing. If you have heard about megacities, which is about 10 million or more, there are going to be 50 plus megacities around the world. That means you are going to have so many people really crammed into a very small square kilometer area, which means that the congestion is going to go up, the noise is going to go up. You will have problems with bus routes, taxi routes, all kinds of problems. You're going to have, I mentioned smart lighting. I don't know if many of you know. Can you guess of a city's budget, how much money is spent in lighting up the city? Any guess?
1%.
How much?
1%.
40%. 40% of city's budget goes in. Think about all the light poles. Around 5:36, they turn on. They are on, whether you are there or there is any traffic there or not, and they extinguish around 6:30 or 7. The amount of energy they consume is, some places is 40%, some places is 50% of their overall budget. So if you can solve that problem, entrepreneurs, here are some opportunities. If you can solve that problem, it's a major step. Look at waste management. Many times your garbage truck comes in, your garbage dump might be only 10% full. So the question is, why do you need to pick up your garbage? Why not wait until it's completely full so that you're actually optimizing your garbage truck route and you're saving? All these are true opportunities, by the way. If you go and talk to cities, people will actually talk about these being real problems. Think about smart environment, forest fire detection. Now that we have, yesterday we had some discussions about beetles and forests becoming dry, and if you can do those ahead of time, you have also air pollution. You have carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, probably 6 different types of nitrogen oxide compounds, you have hydrocarbon, you have gases, you have dust, you have all kinds of problems. How do we deal with those? In places where you have, at least in the last month, you must have heard one up in Washington where they had a major landslide and 60 or people died. If you can monitor the soil with sensors, you can look at vibrations and earth densities, and if you can predict that ahead of time, you can save lives. So all these are, by the way, these are not cooked up problems, these are real problems. Let me add one more. On smart water. I have heard some really scary statistics. First statistics, to cover the population of Earth, we already need about 3 Earths to provide good water supply. So we know how bad the water supply is worldwide. Second, statistics. Of the good water, drinkable water, only 13% of the water actually ends up in your and my stomach. The rest of it is consumed by industry. So you can look at, by the way, I don't know what the statistics in Laramie is. Almost all places, I know my hometown, Portland is a different story because it always rains there. But other places, you could find water going about 50 feet deep. Now people have to drill sometimes 800 feet, 900 feet. All the aquifers are just vanishing. So these are real problems, whether it is river floods, whether it is another interesting water leakages. Tokyo was the only place that I found that had 3% water leakage that they couldn't account for. Most cities, Laramie one example, we have 50-year-old pipes on Grand Avenue. 30 to 40% of the water, cities don't even know where it goes. It just leaks for major cities, and we don't even know where that water goes. You can't bill for that water if you don't know where it is going. So all these are real problems, and you can look through the remaining, 10 or more slides that I'm going to skip. But I will leave the presentation with you. But these are real problems, and as entrepreneurs we can say, what can I do to solve these real problems? So, in order to solve these problems, we are going to, of course, need a large number of sensors. These devices are going to create large amounts of data. That data has to be captured. That data has to be stored. It has to be transferred. It has to be processed. It has to be interpreted, and it has to be acted upon. So, guess what that means is, I think I was trying to refer to where do these opportunities come from, and I think I have at least made a small attempt in communicating to you. The hordes of problems that you see, these are real problems. You talk to cities. I have talked in my city, I have talked to Portland, I have talked to Hillsborough, I have talked to Beaverton, I have gone in European cities, in Dublin and London, and in many other cities, and they have exactly the same problem. The problems sometimes are so acute that the European Union is actually coming out with legislation that says, per acre, a farmer will only get this much amount of water. So very clearly define how much fertilizer you can put per acre. You can decide to use all that water in 1 month, and then keep screaming for the next 11 months, but really find out how to ration that water. There is just not enough water. So I think I want to talk about some big ticket opportunities. First one I call sensor fusion. So there are probably, if you look at different types of sensors, there are 60, 70, 80, 100 different types of sensors, from accelerometer, gyros, compass, sensors that check ultraviolet radiation, things that check light that check ozone. There are probably hundreds and hundreds of sensors. These sensors have to work together to make common sense, just like humans do, right? Why is it important to meet face to face? Because not only I'm hearing your voice, but I'm learning from your body language, and I'm taking the visual data, audio data. Maybe you're sending chemical signals, which I probably don't know how to process, but my brain knows how to. I'm taking all of that data in a multimodal sense, and my brain is trying to interpret. We want the same thing to happen when multiple sensors are working together in a system. How do you fuse that sensor information? There is tremendous opportunity to develop software and develop algorithms. So that's the one big ticket item. The second one I call analytics and algorithms. You will have, once you have this much amount of data, one other thing that I have suggested is, first of all, realization that you cannot take all these petabytes of data and move it to backend. What does that mean? That means the data has to be processed at the edge. I'll give you an example. In London, there are more cameras than there are people. In Beijing, probably there are 4 times as many cameras as there are pictures. Now, if I'm in London if I'm a camera, I'm in London looking at a particular area and nothing has changed, for example, I don't see any terrorist-looking guy with a hood with a brown bag trying to drop something. I process it locally. I don't need to send that data up the channel. I process that data and make decisions saying there is no suspicious activity. I can do activity processing. Now, if something bad is likely to happen, now I want to process that data more heavily and maybe also push that data up. So it's important to do analytics at every level, and I'll also predict in the next 10 to 15 years, just like a few years ago we had shortages of doctors and nurses, there is going to be a shortage of data scientists. So if you have children who are going to college, tell them the one discipline that's going to require, that is going to be very demanding, is being a data scientist, meaning they have to learn math though. But analytics, the third one is what I call energy harvesting and storage. I'll give you one example. All of us have magnetometers in this, right? Each one of those devices. So about a month ago, I did some calculations. I took the total available market for all magnetometers around the world. These magnetometers are on 7 by 24 by 365. So I took an average power each one of them takes, and I summed up all this, and I found that the energy used by these magnetometers is more than the energy that the city of Sacramento uses. So think about it. If you really open up this magnetometer, it's a tiny, tiny device. But if you sum up all the power that's taken by all the magnetometers around the world, the amount of energy that's required exceeds city of Sacramento. I haven't even talked about other power-consuming sensors like cameras. So most of these sensors will have to be to harvest energy either from TV signals or from your Wi-Fi access point, or by heat, or by light, or by some other means. I think you probably have seen yesterday, I don't know who said, if you have a 5 Fahrenheit difference, you can create enough energy to light a small torchlight. So there is a girl, she was part of Intel Science Foundation. She came out, all you have to do is have a thermocouple, use Peltier effect, where your body is at maybe 97, 98 degrees. In Laramie, it might be 28 degrees. That temperature difference is good enough to create energy to light up maybe your phone. If not, sorry. I think we have to find solutions, and once we have the energy, then to be able to store that energy. And I don't know if you have heard, but there is a lot of research going on right now in supercaps. Supercaps are capacitors that can store large number of coulombs in a very tiny, tiny space. They can last really long. We probably have heard about 15 and 20-year-old batteries. And these are important because a lot of these sensors might be sticking under the bridge, and they need to be powered, and you're not going to go and change batteries under a bridge every 6 months. The fourth one is end-to-end security, and I'll show you an example in a minute. There are horror stories coming out. Horror stories in the devices. Think about, I live in a country where there is Bonneville Power Station. If every device and every actuator that is IPv6 capable, that means I can access it, think about if I can control the nozzle that's pushing water through the turbines, and instead of 100,000 cubic feet per minute, now I can control it so it sends 1 million cubic feet per minute. Think about what's going to happen to Portland with floods. So actually today I have that capability. I can control traffic lights. There are hundreds. I can control your refrigerator at your home. So I think the key things are going to be there. Plenty of opportunities going to be there to ensure end-to-end security all the way from sensors to the back end. And the last one is human to machine and machine to machine communication. Now that we are going to have 50 billions of these devices, eventually they have to be meaningful to you. That means you may not be actually connecting with those devices, but the collective intelligence is something that I would like to know about. I'll give you an example. If you will find applications here that I can pull up an application that will show me quality of schools in my neighborhood. The second one can show me the statistics on the maybe the rainfall. The third one can show me the prices of the houses. The fourth one could possibly show me the whatever. But if I'm a real estate agent, I don't want to deal with all those islands. I want all that information to be pulled at one place, so when I show you or you a new home, I can give that. I don't have to turn on each application. It's almost like an application of application that sits on the very top. And that's what I mean by human is going to work with one machine, but there are probably hundreds of little things that are sitting in the back collecting information. So sensor fusion, I just want to expand on each one of them. There are going to be hundreds of different types of sensors, as you can see, MEMS sensors, and there are other sensors. Collectively, you have to fuse them. That's the term that is used, is creating intelligence out of each one of those sensors to make some higher level decisions. The second piece that I talk about, analytics and algorithm, this is just a transformation. You will probably get petabytes of sensor data. If you have, I don't know if you have seen this pyramid before, but sensor data, I'll give you a quick example. Sensors give me, for example, in a GPS coordinate, it gives me XYZ coordinates. That to me is data. Information is, if there's a Starbucks at this location, now I have a little more information. Now I have converted data into information. The third one is, if Sandhi goes to the same location 5 times a week, now I have more information on Sandhi. Maybe Sandhi likes coffee, right? So that's knowledge. And the very last thing is what I call wisdom. If I'm going to Tokyo and I like coffee, the system actually tells me, hey, you like coffee, there is one Starbucks right around the corner, right? Each one of those levels is going to require tremendous amount of data processing using fairly complex types of algorithms to move data to information to knowledge to wisdom. The last one is almost like a recommendation system. But the importance of analytics and algorithm is pretty key. And most of the processing being done locally, and I think most of the data processing done at the edge, and then for wisdom, you need to have a temporal information, that is captured over 6 months or 8 months or a year. That is done in cloud. So I think I'm going to skip this, but all I want to show, we have been using energy harvesting. You remember the Citizen Watch? I had the Citizen Watch for a long time. I didn't have to do any put new batteries. You have now flexible photovoltaic arrays. You have piezoelectric. You can use body heat. There are a number of these devices. We all have to do is find a comprehensive mechanism to pull that energy. Otherwise, I'm predicting that we are going to come to a stage where we're going to run short of energy. It's not that we are short of energy. Today we have ample energy, but that energy that comes at a cost, and mostly it's environmental cost. And that's one of the reasons we could burn coal through Wazoo and we can have enough energy. That's not the point. The thinking, the winds are changing now. The people are wanting things to be more sustainable. And we have to power these 50 billion devices and 1 trillion sensors through energy harvesting. This is maybe an eye chart, but you can look at this is already happening. There was an external attack on Saudi oil production. This is somebody hacking into the oil production system. You can look at, hackers can take control of your car. They can break into your HVAC system. They can attack on California substation fuels, grid security debate. Hackers break into 3 big medical devices. These are actual examples. Look at the top one. Hacker takes over baby monitor and shouts obscenities at sleeping child. These are not myths. This is happening today. A fridge has been discovered sending out spams after a web attack managed to compromise that smart gadget. So everything that you are putting on the internet is going to face a security problem. Guess how much opportunity is there to be able to provide solution as an entrepreneur. Think about all the opportunities. There are literally tens of, probably hundreds of billions of dollars of opportunity here to turn into gold. I think I already talked about being able to connect to hundreds and thousands of those devices. This is where I want to go into. Next 2 slides, I'm going to spend a little more time walking through, because these are actual examples now. First one is sensors. Now that we have sensors, there is a lot of opportunities for creating new, cheap, efficient, low-power sensors. We need also a large number of biosensors. That's where a lot of innovation and opportunities. There is what I call slow sensor processing. That means low-level analytics that works at the sensor level itself. So for example, if I have a sensor here, if it can make basic interpretations, Sandhi is walking, Sandhi is going up the stairs, Sandhi has stopped, those will actually help making a number of decisions. For example, you can take similar health decisions, for example. The third one is fast sensor processing. That there are a large number of audio and video processing that needs to be done. And I'm not going to go into the debate in terms of privacy issues, whether somebody should listen to your audio video. I think that in my mind at least, we are already past that. Already we are being watched every step of the way. I think the question is, there is still a large amount of opportunity in converting what I call fast processing, which is wireline speed processing. I don't know if you guys know, in Lincoln City, in Oregon, about prior to September 11th, there used to be a little brown place where all the fiber came in, and you could actually see the fiber going into the Pacific Ocean. Since that time, that building is now probably 100 feet by 100 feet big, filled with Cray computers, and every bit gets looked at, every bit, whether it is audio, video, text, whatever it is. So a large amount of data gets processed. Computing at the edge versus cloud, I talked about a lot of opportunity for doing computing at the very edge. I talked about end-to-end security, especially security at the very front end. Of the end-to-end IoT value chain, the most vulnerable point is the sensor itself. You can fake the data, you can inject the data, that has to be highly secure. There are opportunities in terms of all of these devices need to be able to talk with each other. So if my temperature is going up in my room, I shouldn't be going back to some cloud to figure out what's happening. I should be able to interact with the next room and say, I'm seeing a rising temperature, room next to me, are you seeing the same thing? And be able to take a local decision and say fire, and take the decisions locally. We talked about security, we talked about energy harvesting. As I mentioned, analytics is going to be where probably the biggest opportunity is going to be there in the Internet of Things. A lot of these data, by the multi-cloud data sense-making analytics. Think about health epidemics, right? We have CDC in Atlanta, but there are multiple places, maybe in Switzerland, maybe in Hong Kong. All that data has to be correlated to be able to figure out what new strains, what new viruses, what new things are happening, and to be able to communicate back to the citizens. Device management, think about all these billions of devices. You can't just put them there. Eventually, you might have to push a new operating system. You might want to push a patch. Maybe I need to change upper and lower control limits. I might be looking at temperature between X and Y. Now I might have to go back and do X plus 1 and Y plus 3 is the new limits. I should be able to only I, meaning the controller of the system, should be able to securely push down the new policy. Not you, not you, but only the person that owns. So it has to be a very securely done management. Actuators, I think, as I mentioned, one example that I gave you is the Bonneville Power Station nozzle. Nobody in the world should be able to get to that. It has to be highly secure. And then predictive algorithms. I'll give you one example, and then I'll probably finish this. Simple things like a generator in a Bonneville Power Station. When I put a new generator in, the ball bearings are really nice and tight. I have one axis, really rotates nicely. After a while, those ball bearings start getting eroded, or they start becoming smaller. Now you are creating a bubble in that axis. Now the stator in that DC generator or AC generator is not quite doing smooth. It now is doing this, right? At some stage, if you run this too long, then you can burst the ball bearings and you can have disaster. So a simple thing would be to be able to have sensors on those and be able to look at a very specific signature coming out of that generator to be able to say, aha, I think when the loads are not high, this is the time to make and change the ball bearing. That's what I mean by predictive algorithm. Making sure that the things are not failing, but you are fixing them ahead of time. So just to summarize, I think there are plenty of opportunities for innovation. There is not a shortage of innovation. The old problems are now being replaced by new problems. And these are some, and I'm sure there are more problems in this. And the last one, in summary, I think there is plenty of opportunity. I think if you are convinced this is the way, you have to believe in yourself if you're an entrepreneur. By the way, I don't know if Scott is here or not. I'm speaking from experience because two things I have done that he said. I have done a startup in which I failed. I did that for 2 years. Finally, my wife said, hey, bring some money home. The second one is I do have patents. So I have done both. So I can at least say a few things here. So passionately pursue. I think, as I mentioned, I gave you an example of when I did a presentation to our CEO. 11 months of no could be pretty depressing. That could happen to you. You might be interested in getting VC funding. You are just not getting. You're not getting. You will encounter hurdles and naysayers. I think you have to keep focused on what you believe in. And at the end of the day, you have to find one person, one sponsor who trusts in you, who believes in you, and he is the person who should be able to say, I'll make a few phone calls for you. You don't want to hear from that person like, why don't you talk here to that guy and that guy and that guy. No. You want that person to be able to make phone calls for you, which is, it's like replicating you. He's calling on your behalf, that he trusts you and he really understands what you're trying to do, and he's willing to make phone calls. And the last one is you will see there are brick walls everywhere, and that's part of being living life. There is a reason why there are walls. The weak stop there and saying there are walls. What can I do? There are walls. If you have strength and you have convictions, you will go and climb over the wall, and that's when the success comes. And it might take you 5 attempts, 10 attempts to climb over the wall, but there is nirvana. There is success. There are dollars once you believe in yourself and cross over the wall.
Great. Thanks. Questions, Sandhi?
Sandhi, thank you very much for your talk. Really appreciate it. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask a question about Moore's Law, given that this is an opportunity to hear from Intel for all of us. So implicit in your argument with 1 trillion sensors and having the computing happen at the edge of this network is that processing power is going to continue to ride a Moore's Law type of cost curve down.
Yeah.
Given that we're within a couple of nodes of reaching the limit of geometric scaling for semiconductor chips on the digital side, talk about how Intel is going to make that processing power cheaper when we start to talk about moving all of that computing power to the edge with a number of sensors that's that high.
So I'll give you my interpretation. I'm not a semiconductor physicist, but I'll give you. I think we are probably okay with next 10, maybe 15 years to continue to drive. I think there's a cost associated with it. Just because it's physically possible doesn't necessarily mean you should do anything about it. I don't know if any of you have actually gone to a fab. It is magic. It is absolutely magic how you fit in 1.5 billion, 2 billion transistors in a tiny, tiny space. It is absolutely the word's magic. We are not talking about 1 atom, 2 atoms, 3 atoms apart, where you have leakage currents, you have things jumping, you have electromagnetic effects or what I call transmission like effect. Those problems are physics problems, and as long as their problems are solvable, the question is the cost you have to pay to solve these problems might not be worth it. The second point is, even if you do a lot of the processing at the edge, the number of devices and the amount of data that you're going to create still is going to have tremendous effect on the back-end servers. So the high-end server demand is not, just because I'm processing at the edge doesn't mean that is going down. In fact, the amount of data that I'm creating, even if I chop that data from data to information to knowledge, at the very front end, there's still so much data that's going to flow back. So I think the both will coexist, the front and the back.
Where will the cost scaling come from, if not geometry?
I don't know. I mean, that's why I said some of it is purely looking at the architecture. Architecture means physical architecture. You know, the semiconductor guys do talk about different methods, which I'm not very familiar, to be honest with you. I mean, I know of them, but I don't think I'm intelligent enough to go beyond one line.
Sandhi, John, could you describe opportunities of existing markets versus futurism, and how a large company like yours examines that entrepreneurially, and how smaller companies might to equal the success of a bigger company like yours?
I don't think I quite understand, but I'll try to answer. I think my particular job is to look forward. The rest of the company, I think the way I have done it is I bring things to a certain level of innovation. I work with senior management to bring those opportunities, saying, hey, this is something coming, we better start addressing. Once the management takes an action, it goes into execution, I'm done. I move to something else. So the tactical innovations happen in a product group. That's a 1 to 3 year innovation that happens in the product group. I tend to look things that impact in a large scale and impact in a big way. So, for example, as I mentioned, when I proposed the multimodal and adaptive interfaces, this was the time when we were still working with keyboard and mouse. And I went back to management and said, hey, there are other modes of communication we'll be seeing in the future. You know, touch and gestures and fingerprints and whatnot. The same thing with sensors. The only sensor I think that was there in the laptop was inside your hard drive. Just if it was, if there was a time when your laptop was about to fall, the heads went back into the home. There were maybe temperature sensors, but we didn't have the same level of sensors. And I was predicting, saying, hey, we're going to have half a dozen to a dozen sensors in all kinds of devices. So I tend to look at things that might be in the horizon. It's with a periscope or telescope looking at the edge and seeing which, if there are any ships coming.
Is that realistic, though, for smaller entrepreneurs to be looking out that far without the immediacy that you've got access to with product management groups?
It is possible. In fact, the 2 pages of problems that I've talked about are real today. The problems about algorithms, the problems about analytics, the problem of energy harvesting, these are today's problems. The problem is that the life of them is probably the next 5 to 10 years. That means there will continue to be problems. Security, for example, I don't know your background, but security has been, the last 30 years we have been dealing with security, and as much as I know, in the next 50 years we'll be dealing with security. So most of the problems that I talked about are today's problems. And some examples, half a dozen examples that I showed the horror stories of Internet of Things, those are today's problems.
My name is Ann Gunn, and I'm a software developer.
Yeah.
And so you kind of just said that this is an unfair question, and that's okay. I'm going to ask it anyway. Since you're a far out 3-year, 5-year, 7-year person, you think about what's going to be there, and you envision hardware. But those are today's problems, and if you had to pick a software technology to use to begin managing, for example, the Internet of Things. I live in a place where there's just an enormous amount of energy development. So if I wanted to, if you were advising me about which software technology to pick to be out there beginning to provide these solutions, which would it be?
Okay, good question. And I have an answer for it. So that's why it's a good question. About 2.5 or 3 years ago, as I was traveling to Beijing, I had a retinal detachment in Beijing. So what do? I take the next flight, I come back. And Oregon has a very high-end institute called Casey Institute. Casey is the UPS chairman who has funded that. So while I was there, I started talking to, I'm curious, so even when I was being operated, I was still asking questions. And I was asking basic questions. My eye has an optic nerve. What's the bandwidth of that optic nerve? Where does the processing occur? Does it occur in the brain? Does the optic nerve has the compute capability? Or the retina itself can make some decisions? Just like today, if my hand is touched by fire, the signal is not going out of the brain. My reflex is instantaneous. Right from here, not from here. So as I started asking those questions, a lot more questions came in. You probably have seen today, I don't know how much time do I have. I'll give you an example. I took my son in 2000. I took him back to India. He was in high school, and I said, "Hey, let me show you my high school." So I took him into my high school, and while I was there, I said, "Let me see if we can talk to the headmaster." So we were sitting there. The headmaster walks. The very first thing he says, "Sandhi, when did you get here?" Now, that headmaster I have not seen for 25 years. Since then, my size has changed. I have gray hair. But what his brain could do is take whatever features I had, somehow instantaneously extrapolate them 25 years down the road. Not only that, then he calls his assistant and says, "Why don't you call this teacher, this teacher, this teacher, and say Sandhi is here." So he looked at that. Of the teachers who taught me, who were still teaching, he pulled them in. Then, while I was sitting, he started telling my child what all the things that I had done, taking part in science club or drama or whatever. And I was sitting there and I said, "How come the computer cannot do this?" So going back to your question, I think our current computing methodologies itself is wrong, which is a linear von Neumann method. Go to register A, pull that in, go to register B, pull that in, do some operation, push it back. There's something totally wrong. When I was under Dr. McGee, I was doing work here for my master's thesis, and he was bringing in stuff from Martin Marietta. This was the Cold War time. So he was bringing images, and I was supposed to figure out whether something was an airplane or a tank. These are all satellite pictures. For that, I had to start figuring out, can I even figure out what a circle looks like, right? Today's methodology is, you take picture of a circle, go pixel by pixel, left to right, then run an algorithm, x squared plus y squared equal to r squared, and do the edge algorithm, and then figure out, aha, this is a circle. My eye doesn't do it. Eye doesn't take time. I have to have 1/10 of a millisecond just to look at it and say, certain is a circle, that's a car, that's a Mercedes, or that's a BMW, or whatever that is. You probably also have seen paragraphs where every word that the spelling is all mixed up, and I can still read at the same speed. I can also, I have seen writings where only 10 or 15% of each character is visible. I can still read through. So the software problem, our compute thinking model itself is wrong. We need to have a different way of thinking. So when I look at you, a month later, if I meet you again, and I will probably remember who you are. What exactly I'm storing? I'm not storing every pixel of your face, but I'm storing something. I don't think software engineering has figured out what exactly is that feature extraction that I do that I store. Does that answer your question?
No, but it was right.
Oh, okay, ask me again. Sorry.
Okay. Hello. So
We can talk again, by the way. I'll give you that.
So you were talking about upstream data, and I was realizing that we also have large, massive quantities of downstream data. And so as I see it, within right now and in the near future, we have the convergence where we're going to get rid of landlines, analog phone lines and cable TV, and that everything's going to be data networks. And so we're going to have our phone, our television, our computer, everything over the same, IP network. And, I see it that, someday we'll all have like an Android or a cell phone, and then we'll have, a single like television monitor or large LCD monitor of some sort that our handheld device directly interfaces with so we can get a larger image.
Yes.
And then,
By the way, we can do that today with WYO technology.
yeah, like the Chrome device. Anyhow, and then, as far as you're talking about processing stuff before it gets sent up so that you don't have this large quantity of data to send up, then you perhaps have distributed file systems so that you could localize data for download, in regions where, be less transfer of data so it wouldn't have to go as far to reach its download destinations. And so, in my mind, realizing that that's, the future, the present, trying to identify products in that type of market, or, more of a home system where everything directly interfaces and everything's converged over, an IP network.
If I understand your question correctly, I think the short distance is okay. Short distance meaning within my home, devices talking to each other, devices talking, because eventually, again, architecture, I'm not predicting an architecture, but you could look at your home server as the access point, everything talks to each other. And as long as you're at home and you're not moving, you still probably have fiber back home. I think the types of devices that I was talking about are the devices where there is no way to run a 110 volt line or an Ethernet line or a fiber. Because these devices could be on the wall, on the tree, on a cliff, somewhere where I cannot connect energy pipe, 110 volt or those devices have to be part of the wireless network. You also mentioned there is a downstream. Of course there is a downstream. Normally when I talk with sensors, I'm talking about sensors and actuators. Because think of simple example, I forgot the name, where you can remotely control the dead board in front of your home. Sears guy comes in, he needs to fix your washer or dryer. I have a little camera, he throws his batch, I see him, I validate him, he comes in, he fixes on the way, and then I remotely from my office, I put the dead board back. Those types of things is of course download. But those are, it's a mixture of wireless and wireline. As long as it's fixed like a home, I don't think you have a problem. The problem is going to come when you push large amounts of data wirelessly.
And of course, they're sending a lot more power wirelessly now. So do you see that as a major trend, that having more wireless power devices?
I have started seeing a lot of wireless charging. I mean, this has been a dream for the last 50 years. Especially in Colorado, what's his name? Tesla have been doing wireless power things for the last 50, 60 years. I think a lot of people don't run wire, but people are not necessarily thinking in that efficiency. When I have wire, I have 100% efficiency, close to 100% efficiency. every time I have wireless, I'm still, I don't know what the exact figures are, probably 75% efficiency. That means most of the radiation is going out nowhere.
Any other questions for Sandhi? Yes.
My question is, from your talk, is the sensor development is not Intel's roadmap now?
Say that again. Last part.
The sensor development, is
No.
that on Intel's roadmap?
Yes and no. Some sensors it doesn't make sense for Intel to build. Right? Some sensors have the technology is totally different. It's not the high-end technology. Most of them are N-3, N-4 technologies. You probably need a 6-inch fab. You don't need big deal things. A lot of these sensors are in few hundreds or tens of micrometers. We now work with, we're talking about 14 nanometer and 10 nanometer. So the technology is different. The scales are 1,000 times far away. But certain sensors make sense. For example, a temperature sensor makes sense to be built right where the chip is, because chip is big and it has lots of hot spots. So if I don't need certain pieces of that chip, and if I'm not computing, there's no reason for me to keep that piece of silicon on. And I could be doing a lot of stuff if I had temperature sensors. But that's inbuilt for our own use, meaning CPU management. I have a hard time believing most of the sensors will probably buy from outside.
Yeah, that's interesting to hear because I used to be the backend when it is 3 nanometer photolithography, and then I actually worked on much bigger sensor for diabetes management for glucose sensing, right? So interesting. We only need a micron size for that. So I guess my question is Intel right now diversifying their portfolio instead of just computer chips?
Not that I know. I mean, I don't know everything that happens in corporations, but I think the scales are different, the technologies are different. I mean, you look at MEMS technology, it's totally different. Totally different. I would have a hard time. That's why people say, why not get a solar cell? Technologies are different.
Great.
I have to have an offline discussion on that.
Sure. Great.
Thanks.
Please join me in thanking Sandhi. What a great audience you have been. We're going to send you an evaluation in an email, and we'd love to hear what you thought about this and what your suggestions are. We want to thank all of the speakers who have been with us today. Jack Prim, Doug Robinson, Scott Yates, and Sandhiprakash. And I want to thank our sponsors, the EDA, the Wyoming Business Council, the University of Wyoming, and the local sponsors, particularly First Interstate Bank and the Laramie Business Chamber, whatever it is now, the Laramie Economic Development. So y'all will know what I'm talking about. And particularly I want to introduce you to Mike Martin. Mike is with